Hey guys, we are moving on. Actually, we're kind of done with the new content, okay, with a lot of the stuff we were going to do. There's some real weird stuff towards the end of the exam that I'm going to kind of not cover some of that because those that are juniors will go back over some of that in calculus, and then those that move on to higher math, you can learn that in college if you need it. But these last couple sections, it's pretty weird. I mean, I kind of just cover it a little quick during the regular school year, and I just thought on the video it's going to be really weird to try to cover. So we're kind of stopping. I mean, we only had 2 questions that we're kind of moving on from. So we're actually going back and doing some review things, which, for some of you, this is going to be something you remember. Okay, we did some of these earlier, I think in the semester or even last semester. So some of the stuff on the final exam. So we're actually looking at all the problems on the final exam. Some of the final exam stuff is from first semester. So you might remember some of this. Now, guys, remember domain of a function. Remember domain, again, you learned that back in Algebra 1 or even some of you middle school. Domain, remember, is what is allowed to be plugged in for x. Like, what am I allowed to plug in for the x? Okay? So, domain means what can x be? What can the x value be? Okay, so that's the question for domain. What's allowed to be plugged in for x? Now, if you remember, I even know the very first question on the midterm exam when we took it in December, remember we had a fraction, remember? And we know that in the domain, we're not allowed to have a 0 in the denominator. So that was our domain limit. Remember the limit, we're not allowed to plug in a number that makes the bottom of a fraction 0. Now the difference here, I don't have a 0 in the denominator, I don't have a denominator at all. But remember, whatever makes a calculator go error or an undefined number, because that's what 0, anytime you divide by 0 on your calculator, you're going to get error, undefined. What makes error on a calculator with a square root? Any negative number. If you type in square root of any negative number, it's going to say error, okay? Now, if you remember, though, mathematicians don't like to just say, okay, error, undefined, we're not going to use those numbers. So remember, what mathematicians came up with was those imaginary, I got stuck there for a second, imaginary numbers. Remember how we would bring out the letter I and turn it positive, and then we could work with it. So mathematicians didn't like to just say, okay, that's imaginary, we're going to stop. Undefined, we're going to stop. But still, you're not allowed to plug in any number that makes the square root a negative. So the domain says that the inside, so guys, this is actually how we're going to solve it. The inside of this square root has to be positive, either 0 or positive. It's not allowed to be negative. So that says it has to be greater than or equal to 0. Because think about the number line. What numbers are positive or what numbers are not negative? That's what I want to say. What numbers are not negative? 0 and anything that's greater. So this left side has to be greater than or equal to 0 so that it's not negative. Okay? So whatever's inside the square root, we're going to set with greater than or equal to 0. And that's how we're going to find our domain. Now, all I need to do now is just solve this for x. So again, I'm just solving for x. So add 4 to both sides. Okay, I've got my 9x squared greater than or equal 0 plus 4 is 4. Okay, divide away the 9. Divide away the 9. So I've got x squared greater than or equal to 4/9. Now remember, how do we get rid of square? Remember, we square root both sides. So we're going to square root. That cancels the square. Square root 4/9. Okay, I'm going to move sideways here. Square root of 4, 2, square root of 9 is a 3. But guys, remember, when you square root, remember that square right there means there's 2 answers. And remember, we get positive and negative 2/3. Okay, positive and negative 2/3. Now, guys, here's the thing. So what am I allowed to plug in here? anything that's greater than or equal to positive 2/3 or negative 2/3. But guys, because remember, whatever I'm going to plug into x is getting squared. So what happens when you square a positive? It stays positive. But what happens when you square a negative? It also stays positive. So really, guys, these limits right here, the limits to the domain says that if I start at negative 2/3, I'm allowed to be equal to that. Now remember, I know this is, you put a bracket when you're allowed to be equal, but guys, guess what? I could keep going into any negative number because any negative number gets squared and turns positive. So guys, this limit to my domain, this limit to the function can go all the way out to negative infinity and beyond. No, just negative infinity. But you keep going past negative infinity. Okay, now remember, guys, we put a parenthesis when you're not allowed to be equal, because think about it, you're really not allowed to ever be equal to infinity because infinity keeps going. So here we're saying any negative number all the way out, keep going, because it's going to get squared. You're allowed to have any negative number all the way up to negative 2/3. Now you can't go below or to the right of negative 2/3. Now we're going to say the union of, or together with, the positive 2/3 is on the other side of the domain. Now that one can go out to the positive infinity. And again, that is the answer, which means, guys, in between here, the little numbers in between here, if I plug them into here, I would get a negative square root, which I'm not allowed to have, and that would be error on our calculator. So in between negative 2/3 and positive 2/3 on the number line, that little section in between, like where it comes up towards 0, that is not allowed to be used in the domain of this function right here. So here's our answer right here, okay? Negative infinity to my negative answer. Combined, union, U means combined or union with, positive 2/3 out to the positive infinity. Okay, let's try another one over here. Okay, very similar. Okay, so again, here's my function. Square root of 25x squared minus 35. Okay, remember the bottom of that, or the inside of that square root is not allowed to be negative, right? So again, the inside of the square root has to be greater than or equal to 0. So guys, again, just like we did over here, greater than or equal to 0. Whatever's inside the square root has to be greater than or equal to 0. Now again, just solve this one. Okay, so I'm going to add 36 to the other side. So now I've got 25x squared greater than or equal 0 plus 36 is 36. Okay, everybody see that? Okay, get rid of the 25, divide away the 25. Divide away 25. Now, I can't really divide 36 by 25, so I don't want to get some kind of weird decimal. So I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. So I've got 36 over 25. How do I get rid of x squared? Remember, we square root both sides. Okay, square root. Now again, you can see I'm giving you numbers that are kind of easy to work with. Now, in the next video, we'll do ones a little bit harder, but square root of 36, 6. Square root of 25, 5. But remember, anytime we square root, it's a positive and a negative answer. Remember, you get two answers. That's what square means. There's two answers. Positive 6/5, negative 6/5. Okay, now let's build this domain. Remember, guys, because I've got a positive and a negative, and whatever you plug in is going to get squared, there is two sides to this. We put the U for union in the middle. Okay. On the left side, think about it, the number line to the left is the negative 6/5. So negative 6/5. Remember, we need a bracket because that means you're allowed to be equal to. So that bracket means equal to. And then negative 6/5 is going to go far down the number line. Because remember, any number I plug in gets squared. Squared turns it positive. So it can go all the way out to negative. Whoop, that's going to look like an 8. Okay, infinity. Boom. That's a little challenging to draw an infinity. But you can turn your paper sideways, draw an 8, and then turn it back, and it looks like infinity. Okay, so the left side is the negative answer, negative 6/5 out to negative infinity. The right side is the positive answer, positive 6/5 out to positive infinity. Now again, remember, parentheses on the edges of the infinity, brackets in the middle with your u, and boom. That is the answer right there. That's our answer. Okay. Now the next video, we're going to do some similar ones that are a little more challenging, not that much more challenging, okay? So on your homework problem, very similar, okay? Try to watch it a few times if you're stuck, but find the domain for that function right there, square root of 16x squared minus 9. Okay, see what you can get and put your answer in the best you can. Yeah, this is going to be a weird one to type in. Just type it in the best you can in the journal. I know it's hard to put all that into the journal, but do the best you can. Okay, see you next time.